Obviously, you go around the world and looking at nature. Have you ever seen a Ricky Tomlinson and Daniel O'Donnell in the wild?
Lesser spotted Rickies everywhere in Africa.
Bigfoot it.
Yeah.
He told a story earlier on that will never be in any nature documentary
Did it get interesting,
ever.
did it?
It did. Well, interesting's one word for it, Liz, but we'll not go there. Of all the places that you have been, and there's been so many, North Pole, Galapagos, where's been the hardest place to work? Where's been the most rewarding?
Gosh, it's a big question, and it's really hard to always pick like the favourite, the worst. There's been some humdingers. The most rewarding probably is the Russian Far East, filming Amur tigers, the most endangered subspecies of tigers, because I'm obsessed with big cats. And I studied them in Nepal for my master's. And then I got into telly at the BBC doing science programs, and I was knocking on the door of the big natural history unit, you know, the home of David Attenborough, going, I've got a degree and I know science, please can I do, wildlife stuff? And they were like, that's all very well, but there's, millions of people who have degrees who knock on our doors, so you're just going to have to prove your worth. It took ages. And eventually, the first job I had with them was to go to the Russian Far East and film tigers in what looks like Narnia, basically, the most extraordinary place. Very cold, very difficult terrain, but we were working with tigers, and I was pinching myself every single day. So yeah, that's the one that sticks.
So that was tricky. You had a little bit of
That's the most memorable in a way, but
you had a hairy moment in the Galapagos.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I'm just stupid. I say yes to things without really realizing what I'm letting myself in for. The day came, we were on this big research vessel, beautiful ship with 2 submersibles, a dedicated dive team, a wet lab for all samples, and all these scientists were flying in a helicopter on the top. And these scientists were coming in, and we were, traveling around the Galapagos, filming all these different species and diving and going up to the top of volcanoes and filming iguanas. And then they were like, right, we're going to go down to the bottom of the flank of one of the volcanoes. They're all volcanic islands. We're going to go a kilometre beneath the waves, and we're going to just sample a few species, because nobody's ever been there, no eyes have ever set eyes on that place. And I was like, grand. I never really anticipate things. I don't think about things, which probably, I don't know whether it's stupid or wise. Got into the sub, and then I was like, so how long will we be under the water? Like, well, 7 hours, 10 hours. It's like, well, what if you need to... It's a tiny bubble of a thing. It's an 8-ton submersible, but it's a... Well, there you go. That's it there. So there's only room for 3 people. That's Buck Taylor, the most extraordinary sub pilot in the world. But they're like, so you can either wear a big nappy...
Yeah.
Or you
I've got one on at the minute.
Too much information. Or bring a shiwi with you, which I've never used.
What's a shiwi?
Oh, God, we have to go into it. No. So it's basically a contraption for women to be able to urinate if they need to in the wilds or in closed spaces. But that sub was full of GoPros, because we're filming. It's for a series. So not only is it being filmed, but then there's like a gentleman here, pilot beside me. I'm going, God. But you know what? We went under the water. It goes pitch black pretty soon, and you're literally 1,000 meters beneath the surface. And it was wonderful, and it flew by like this. 7 hours was turned into 7 minutes. And it was amazing.
And you forgot to pee.
And I didn't pee once.
There you go.
I did do about 3 nervous pees before we went down. We're talking a lot about pee. I'm not sure. Was that what you were talking about early on as well? Like,
it was sort of in and around the same thing, but we don't need to go there.
That wasn't even the ropey bit, right? The ropey bit was the Galapagos is full of wildlife and a great biodiversity because of this confluence of currents that come in from the deep. And they surge up loads of nutrients, and that's why all this life just springs forth. But they're very powerful currents. So even with an 8-ton sub, when the big upwelling comes, it's like a wall of pea green soup that advances, and you can see it coming. And we were unlucky. We were under the water when one advanced. And it spun us around. There were 2 subs. One was filming us. We were filming, We were being spun around like we were in a washing machine. And we were like, we're either going to crash into the other sub, or we're going to crash into the flank of the volcano. Buck Taylor, the pilot you saw there, the most extraordinary man. We were singing songs.
Great name for a pilot.
His name is really Mark, but we all call him Buck. We were singing songs, eating our lunches, having a great time. He went dead quiet. And when he goes quiet, it's serious. And that's probably one of the only times I've thought, okay, this is how I go.
Yeah.
So that was ropey. And eventually we lost contact with the ship. Everything went wrong. And at that point, we just thought, and he just kept on fighting the current. And eventually we came out of it, Go back to the ship, drank a lot of gin that night, I remember. But yeah, moments like that where you don't really think what you're letting yourself in for.
But in a way, you wouldn't change it because what you do.
No,
I mean, the idea as a kid sitting watching David Attenborough, you're now working with David Attenborough. Am I allowed to say that? I mean, David Attenborough's kind of said that maybe you could.
No, he's no.
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 What do we think? Would you think Liz could be the new?
Can I just... A lot of my colleagues, you know, we've all had that. At some point in an interview, the paper will say, they're the next. None of us, nobody who's been kind of mentioned that, would ever want that to be mentioned because he is incomparable. He is our mentor, our teacher. He's an extraordinary human. So,
Well, what's it like, though, working with a hero?
Well, I stuttered the first time I met him, couldn't put a sentence together. The second time as well, I think I was absolutely appalling. And then you try and get yourself together and, you know, come on, you string a sentence together and get to know him. He is, you know when they say never meet your heroes, it's usually true, unfortunately, isn't it, for the most part, but not with Sir David Attenborough. He's amazing, he's a legend.
Who have you met as a hero, Daniel? I'm sure you've sung with a few.
Oh, well, my favourite singer, Loretta Lynn, Charlie Pride, I've met, you know, both of them. They passed away in the last couple of years, but I got to record with them. And again, they were fantastic. Cliff, I love Cliff. And Cliff Richard, he's a great friend of ours now. But when I met him, he was just ever so nice to me.
Nice.
In the same way that Attenborough was with you.
I mean, when you speak
very
about
kind.
David Attenborough, he has had such an effect on the world. You know, what he has given to us through his career it's comparable to nothing.
Really,
There's
truly.
nothing comparable
and
to
he's
it.
as generous to this day. He's 97 years old now, and he's as generous with his time. Recently enough, we were at an event, and one of the staff members in this museum had brought his kid, and he was being very polite. The kid was just looking at David Attenborough from a distance, and it was very busy. People were milling around, and David was just sitting there quietly and looked over at the little boy and just made his way over, sat beside him, just started a conversation. He's as curious about what he does. He's always like, "Can we go back and look at that thing again? I know we have to have a meeting, but let's all go here and look at this exhibit." You know, he's a wonderful human being, such an inspiration in every single way.